At the border between the Eastern Mystery Region and the Western Mystery Region, this place is the front line nearest to the Western Mystery Region. Just another 1,000 miles forward, and one would reach the boundary of the Western Mystery Region, where the demon prison's main base is located. On a towering mountain peak at this border, several figures sat in quiet meditation. Their forms seemed small at the mountain's summit, yet they exuded a presence of unshakable strength, commanding deep respect and awe. The lineage of the ancestral Talisman Master had been revered by countless beings since ancient times, not only because of their unparalleled power that stood above the heavens and earth, but also due to their selfless dedication to the greater good. In the past, to protect all living beings, the ancestral Talisman Master burned his cycle of reincarnation to seal the alien demon emperor and the dimensional rift, thus preventing the world from falling into ruin. His 8 disciples gave everything to safeguard this world. All powerful figures across the land spoke of them with heartfelt admiration. This was also why, when Xun'er and the others appeared, they could easily unite the 3 major alliances, not merely due to their strength, but because of the sacrifices they had made for the world. At the forefront of the mountain peak, Xun'er sat quietly in meditation. She was not closing her eyes to cultivate, but absent-mindedly drawing circles on a stone with her slender fingers, gloved in white. Even Yinyin and the others noticed her distracted appearance. Such a mood was rare for her. Yinyin and the others exchanged glances, then smiled bitterly. Since sensing Lin Dong's emergence from his seclusion, she had been like this, though. It was at least a far cry from her previous cold, indifferent demeanor. The Chaos Demon Sea has been pacified, Yinyin suddenly spoke up. I hear that Tang Xinlian has led half of the allied forces there to assist the demon realm, while Lin Dong has taken the other half to the 4 mystery regions. Upon hearing that name, Xun'er's hand paused in its motion, and she nodded slightly. Once the demon prison's forces in the demon realm and 4 mystery regions are dealt with, we can begin our attack on the Western Mystery Region. The Dark Lord's brow furrowed slightly as his gaze shifted toward the distant Western Mystery Region. Even from such a great distance, they could still sense the terrifying demonic aura rising from that place. I wonder what the demon prison is up to. They've been strangely quiet, the Thunder Lord said, his tone filled with suspicion. The others nodded in agreement. During this time, the demon prison had made almost no move, seemingly allowing them to eliminate the 3 demon prison armies without interference. Given the cunning nature of the demon prison, it was hard to believe they would make such an unprovoked sacrifice. Clearly, they had some hidden agenda. When the matter turned serious, a cold light appeared in Xun'er's eyes. Her jade-like hand clenched into a fist, and after a brief moment of hesitation, she said, "It's time to prepare the soul summoning guide." Yinyin and the others were taken aback for a moment, then nodded in agreement. It was indeed time. "Then let's prepare," the Dark Lord said, standing up. But just as his words left his lips, his expression shifted. He turned his head toward the distant sky and walked over to Xun'er's side, speaking in a low voice. "It seems it's not quite time yet." Yinyin and the others also sensed something and looked in the same direction. There, the space seemed to twist, and a shadow was rapidly approaching at an astonishing speed. Xun'er clearly recognized that familiar aura. A flicker of urgency and tension passed through her icy blue eyes, and her hand involuntarily tightened into a fist. "Heh, I see you're all here," came a voice as a figure materialized amidst the space distortion. Lin Dong appeared on the mountaintop, greeting the group with a smile and a cupped fist. Yinyin and the others looked at Lin Dong, their eyes filled with surprise. "You've condensed your divine palace?" Their voices betrayed a mix of awe and astonishment. They were all well aware of how difficult it was to condense a divine palace. Even now, they themselves had not achieved it, so seeing Lin Dong accomplish such a feat naturally shocked them. "Just a stroke of luck," Lin Dong said with a smile, shaking his head. Then, his gaze turned toward Xun'er, who sat in front of him. She wore a simple white dress, and her ice-blue hair fluttered gently in the mountain breeze. When their eyes met, she subtly looked away. "You all continue talking," the Dark Lord said, noticing the tension between Lin Dong and Ing Huan. He waved at Yin Lord and the others, signaling for them to leave. Senior sister. Seeing them about to leave, a hint of panic crossed Ing Huan's usually composed heart. She hurriedly tried to stop them, but before she could react, their figures flickered and vanished. Seeing that the Dark Lord and the others had temporarily left, Lin Dong's gaze remained fixed on Ing Huan. He took a few strides toward her, and upon noticing him approach, her usually unshakable demeanor faltered for a brief moment. What's wrong? Aren't you happy that I've come out of seclusion? Lin Dong asked with a smile as he stood before Ing Huan. Not at all, Ing Huan replied, shaking her head. Yet, her beautiful eyes betrayed a flicker of unease. Then look at me when you talk, Lin Dong said, noticing her unusual evasiveness for the first time. Intrigued, he reached out and gently lifted her delicate, snow-white chin, tilting her face upward until their eyes met. Ing Huan froze at his action, staring at the increasingly resolute face before her. The warmth in his smiling eyes sent a faint ripple through her heart. Congratulations on forming your divine palace, she murmured softly. Lin Dong chuckled but soon noticed her hands wrapped in long-sleeved snow-white gloves. Her slender fingers looked particularly fragile under the fabric. Sensing his gaze, Ing Huan instinctively drew her hands back. Before she could retract them entirely, Lin Dong grabbed her wrist and held it firmly. A chilling cold immediately radiated from her gloves. What's going on? Lin Dong frowned. It's nothing, Ing Huan said, struggling to free her arm. However, Lin Dong's grip was unyielding. He glanced at her and carefully removed her glove. Ing Huan sighed quietly, no longer resisting. When the glove came off, what was revealed was not flesh and blood, but a crystalline arm. The delicate limb, once as white as jade, now gleamed like it was made of pure ice. Lin Dong was taken aback as he stared at her arm. The cold emanating from it was so intense that it caused sharp pain in his palm. Sizzle. Frost spread across his hand, and thin layers of ice quickly formed on his arm. The freezing sensation slowed the flow of primordial energy within him. What's going on? Lin Dong ignored the ice forming on his arm and glared at Ing Huan, his voice tinged with anger. Ing Huan bit her lips stubbornly, refusing to speak. This is because of the side effects from opening the Ancestral Palace, isn't it? Lin Dong quickly connected the dots, recalling her strange behavior from before. Why didn't you tell me? If I told you, would you have gone in? Ing Huan stared back at him. That's my decision to make. I told you not to hide things from me. Lin Dong's voice rose with frustration. Even if it wasn't for you, I would have opened the Ancestral Palace. Without it, do you know how many more people would have died in the Chaos Demon Sea, the Demon Realm, and the 4 mystery regions? Ing Huan retorted. Though Lin Dong's anger hurt her, she bit back, her voice resolute despite the slight tremble of grievance. Why do you insist on playing the hero? Lin Dong snapped, his frustration mounting. He had pushed himself to his limits in cultivation, yet she seemed equally determined to sacrifice herself. And what else should I do? Let the demon prison rampage unchecked and watch everyone die? Ing Huan clenched her hands tightly, her voice trembling with emotion. Fine. If you're so keen on being a savior, go ahead. I won't stop you anymore. Happy now? Lin Dong shouted, his eyes blazing with anger. Ing Huan's slender frame quivered. She turned away, her shoulders trembling. Her eyes reddened as tears silently streamed down her cheeks. Then don't care about me anymore. Even if I die, it's none of your business, she cried, wrenching her arm from his grasp. Her voice carried a faint sob. Lin Dong looked at her trembling figure, her vulnerability tugging at his heart. Gone was the icy aloofness she once carried, replaced by a fragile softness that made his chest ache. Without thinking, he reached out again, this time pulling her forcefully into his arms. His iron-like grip encircled her slim waist, her icy touch a stark contrast to her warmth beneath. Don't move, Lin Dong growled, his tone both angry and commanding. Why do you care? Ing Huan retorted through gritted teeth. Lin Dong didn't respond. Instead, he leaned down and pressed his lips against hers. The suddenness of his action stunned them both, their bodies freezing in place. Her lips were cold as ice but sweet like sakura petals. Huan stared at him, her ice-blue eyes wide with disbelief. Her delicate face flushed with a faint pink as her mind blanked. On the mountaintop, the two stood locked in an embrace. Only after a long while did their lips part. You. Huan finally recovered, glaring at Lin Dong with a mixture of shyness and anger. What you? Lin Dong smirked, licking his lips. She was once that lively, charming girl, occasionally willful, sometimes a little spoiled, but still the kind of girl you'd want to hold gently in the palm of your hand. Huan lightly leaned against Lin Dong's chest, savoring the warmth. Her beautiful eyes shimmered with unshed tears, and in a near whisper, she murmured, I don't want to lie to you, but I really had no choice. Hearing the faint sob in her voice, Lin Dong felt a surge of pity and hugged her tightly, saying with determination, I will protect you. Huan closed her eyes slightly, her soft cheek brushing against Lin Dong's chest, a faint smile on her lips, though there was a tinge of bitterness in it. With those words, no matter the outcome, I will be content. On the mountaintop, the two of them embraced for a long time. Finally, Huan gently pushed Lin Dong away. She pressed her lips together, glaring at him with some embarrassment, and said, It's your fault. They must have seen us. So what if they did? Lin Dong shrugged nonchalantly and then smiled at Huan. By the way, I noticed you're starting to act more like your old self again. Maybe it's just a flash of the past, Huan replied casually, but when she saw the suddenly serious expression on his face, she smiled faintly. We're about to begin the soul summoning guide. Soul summoning guide? Lin Dong was surprised. Senior sister hasn't made a move yet, but I feel like she has already successfully entered the reincarnation stage. Once the 3 major regions are settled, we will fight the demon prison. So we need to summon her, Huan explained. Senior sister? Lin Dong frowned, thinking for a moment before asking, the Lord of Life and Death? She's really still alive? Senior sister controls the power of life and death. Among us, if anyone is least likely to fall, it would be her, Huan replied. Won't this force summoning have any side effects? Lin Dong asked. I can sense that senior sister has successfully reincarnated, so there shouldn't be any issues with the summoning now, Huan assured him. Lin Dong nodded slightly. The Lord of Life and Death was one of the 8 ancient lords, so if the great battle were to begin, having her help would surely increase their chances of success. When we set up the soul summoning guide, we'll need you to guard us, Huan said. Leave it to me, Lin Dong replied. Once their conversation ended, Huan waved her hand, and the mountaintop was illuminated with flashing light. The Flame Lord and the others appeared, their eyes still carrying a hint of awkwardness as they looked at the two of them. Ahem. Lin Dong noticed their gazes and cleared his throat. Huan's face also turned slightly red, but she quickly calmed herself and said, Let's begin. The Flame Lord and the others nodded, and then all of them leapt into the air. Terrifying fluctuations of primordial energy spread from their bodies, like a rising tide. The energy spread out, eventually weaving into a complex, intricate array, and Huan and the others positioned themselves at the 6 corners of the array. A glowing protective dome rose up, enveloping the 6 of them. Huan glanced at the Dark Lord, who nodded slightly. He flicked his fingers, and a black and white light shot out, hovering in the center of the array. It was a small ball of light, within which a strand of black hair seemed to be coiling. Faint, strange waves radiated from it. The 6 of them sat cross-legged in midair, slowly closing their eyes, as the black hair began to burn spontaneously without a flame, sending out a mysterious energy that quietly spread and eventually disappeared. The 6 figures in the sky gradually fell into complete silence. Lin Dong watched them for a moment. After seeing nothing unusual, he nodded slightly, then sat down on the mountaintop. He knew they now just needed to wait quietly. Perhaps the next figure to appear on the horizon would be the legendary Lord of Life and Death. For this ancient figure he had never met, Lin Dong felt a sense of curiosity. Summoning the Lord of Life and Death clearly took time. Lin Dong remained on the mountaintop for 10 days. During these 10 days, the 6 of them in the sky showed no signs of stopping. Strange waves of energy emanated intermittently. But as for the Lord of Life and Death, Lin Dong had yet to see her appear. It seemed that summoning her was no simple matter. Meanwhile, during the 10 days Lin Dong stood guard. Both the demon realm and the 4 mystery regions were in turmoil. The battle raged fiercely for 10 whole days, with its sounds and disturbances echoing throughout the demon realm and the 4 mystery regions. The chaos could only be described as catastrophic. Blood soaked the ground, and the sky was obscured by countless massive figures. Such a war could only be described as terrifying. Though the demon prison army was formidable, it had no reinforcements. Meanwhile, the 3 allied factions worked together with high morale. In just 10 days, the 2 demon prison armies from beyond the Western Mystery region were utterly defeated. As the allied forces pursued them, they were scattered, their ranks collapsing, with the majority killed or wounded. By this point, the situation across the 3 regions was gradually stabilizing. Once the battlefield was cleared and reorganized, the 3 allied armies began to converge on the 4 mystery regions. The sheer scale of their forces was overwhelming. As the people of the 4 mystery regions looked up at the sky, they saw wave after wave of troops sweeping across like a black cloud. They were stunned. Compared to the previous war with the Yuan sect in the Eastern Mystery region, this felt on a completely different level. The 3 allied armies gathered in the 4 mystery regions. After some restructuring, they began their advance toward the Western Mystery region. The pressure from their immense force darkened the sky. The vast and overwhelming battle intent emanating from the combined armies seemed to make the very heavens and earth tremble. As the allied forces closed in on the Western Mystery region, Lin Dong, atop a towering mountain at the edge of the region, felt the tension. He opened his eyes, his face serious as he gazed into the far distance. Is the final battle about to begin? Lin Dong muttered. The stillness before the storm was suffocating. This time, without the legendary Ancestral Talisman Master to hold up their side, they would have to rely on themselves to protect this world. He took a deep breath and looked up at the light formation in the sky. It had been the 15th day, but there was still no sign of action. If not for Huanhuan's certainty, Lin Dong might have doubted whether the Lord of Life and Death had failed in his reincarnation. If that were the case, it would be a devastating blow to them. Lin Dong frowned, but just as doubt started to creep in, the light formation in the sky suddenly shimmered. Then, a brilliant beam of light shot straight into the sky. The light was mysterious. Though it was incredibly powerful, it seemed almost imperceptible to ordinary people. Even Lin Dong, having ascended to the divine palace realm, could only feel it now. At the same time, Huanhuan and the others slightly opened their eyes. A look of tension appeared in their eyes. If this soul-summoning light couldn't summon the Lord of Life and Death, then their efforts would have failed. We can only wait for a response now. They exchanged glances. There was nothing more they could do. Meanwhile, far away in the Eastern Mystery region, the Great Yin dynasty's Great Wilderness province began to stir. In a city at the center of the province, a small figure sat atop a high pavilion, her delicate legs swinging gently as she hummed a cheerful tune. The girl's song suddenly stopped. She looked up with a dazed expression, her pure eyes reflecting a bright beam of light from the distant sky. What is that? Her swinging legs gradually slowed. It was as though countless colors flickered in her large eyes. Then, a look of pain appeared on her face, as if something deep within her mind had awakened. Boom! An overwhelmingly terrifying aura erupted. Above the city, the clouds twisted, forming a massive black and white vortex. As the clouds swirled, they began to take the shape of a giant circular cloud. The cloud, black and white, seemed to represent life and death. A figure suddenly streaked out from the city, appearing atop the high pavilion. The girl with the changing expression in her big eyes was startled, and a trace of panic crossed her face as she quickly spoke. Yinyin, what's happening to you? The little girl, named Yinyin, slowly raised her face. She gazed at the beautiful and kind woman in front of her, then smiled faintly. But that smile lacked the usual innocence and playfulness. You. Jiang Shui's face paled as she looked at Yinyin, her eyes filling with tears. You have awakened? Yinyin stepped out from the high pavilion, walking through the air, and gently landed in front of Jiang Shui. She hugged her, her voice still childlike. Sister, thank you. Jiang Shui trembled as she looked at the little girl in her arms. Her eyes reddened. Awakening doesn't mean erasing past memories. Although I've changed, I am still the Lord of Life and Death, and also Yinyin said softly. Lord of Life and Death? Jiang Shui's body trembled. She had only known Yinyin as a reincarnator but never imagined her past life was as one of the 8 ancient lords, the Lord of Life and Death. Are you leaving us now? Jiang Shui murmured. No, not yet. I'm going to help them. You're aware of the demon prison situation, right? If we don't deal with them, we'll never find peace. Yinyin shook her head, smiled at Jiang Shui, and said, Sister, don't worry. Once this is settled, I'll come back, okay? Jiang Shui didn't respond, only nodding as she tightly embraced the little girl, as though afraid of losing her. Yinyin also hugged Jiang Shui's neck, giving a gentle kiss on her snowy white collarbone. Then, her body began to fade, gradually disappearing completely. Come back to me, Jiang Shui whispered, staring at her now empty arms as tears finally spilled uncontrollably down her cheeks. On the mountaintop, Lin Dong gazed at the beam of light in the sky. His mind stirred as his eyes turned to the distance, where flashes of light appeared. A few breaths later, a petite figure materialized under their tense gazes. As the glow dissipated, the little girl was revealed. Lin Dong and his companions stood dumbfounded. You. Lin Dong stared at the familiar, adorable little girl, his eyes filled with disbelief. You're Yinyin? Big brother? Yinyin said sweetly, rushing straight into Lin Dong's arms amidst Huan and the others' stunned expressions. Lin Dong looked into her dark eyes. Where innocence once resided, a profound depth now lingered, one that seemed to comprehend life and death itself. His body stiffened as shock overwhelmed him. Who could have guessed that the Lord of Life and Death they had been searching for was Yinyin all along? On the mountaintop, Lin Dong held the little girl in his arms, still reeling from his shock. After a moment, he exhaled deeply, lowered his gaze to Yinyin, and saw her black eyes mischievously fixed on him. Yet, within them, there was no trace of her former innocence, only a hint of playfulness. I can't believe it. After all these years, the famous Lord of Life and Death turned out to be you. Lin Dong sighed, his feelings complicated. Was this Yinyin still the cheerful, innocent little girl they had once known? He found none of that in her eyes. Perhaps her memories had merged, but now, she was more Lord of Life and Death than Yinyin. Why the heavy expression? Reincarnation isn't rebirth. Memories merge, they're not erased. When I'm with my sister, I'm still the same Yinyin, she said, her dark eyes seemingly seeing right through Lin Dong's thoughts. Lin Dong scratched his head, glanced at Huan and the others, and shrugged. Your senior sister is back. Hi, everyone. Did you miss me? Yinyin waved cheerfully at Huan and the others, her smile radiating innocence. Senior sister, this look suits you perfectly, the Lord of Space teased with a grin, tugging at Yinin's long hair. Yinyin leapt up and yanked his ear with force. Little Kong, show some respect to your senior sister. Haven't I taught you enough lessons about manners? The Flame Lord and the others couldn't help but smile bitterly at the scene. Though her appearance had changed, her fiery personality hadn't. After thoroughly reprimanding the Lord of Space, Yinyin clapped her hands, her gaze shifting to the Western Mystery region. A shadow passed through her dark eyes. It seems they found the demon prison I sealed. Huan nodded. The 3 allied forces are on their way. Once the armies are assembled, we'll launch an assault on the Western Mystery region and eradicate the demon prison. So, it's war again, Yinyin sighed, her youthful voice carrying a weighty gravity. But this time, we don't have our master to shield us. Everything will depend on us. The Flame Lord and the others grew solemn at her words. Don't be so pessimistic, senior sister. Our master may be gone, but the alien demon emperor is gone too. Trapped in this world, they're no better than prisoners. Their defeat is inevitable, Huan said. Yes, though our master is no longer here, the most terrifying alien demon emperor is also gone, Yinyin replied with a smile. Her gaze, fixed on the western mystery region, glinted with a sharp, cold light. Perhaps in 2 days, the allied forces will arrive here, Flame Lord remarked. The Lord of Life and Death stretched her tiny arms and said with a sweet smile, then let's wait 2 more days. By then, we'll wipe out all those alien demons. Although she smiled innocently, her words carried such an intense killing intent that the temperature in the air dropped noticeably. Big brother, the Lord of Life and Death, suddenly tilted her head and looked at Lin Dong. Could you not call me that? Lin Dong shuddered involuntarily, speaking with some exasperation. The Lord of Life and Death chuckled softly and then lazily teased. Still, you're impressive, aren't you? Even our cold little junior sister fell for you. Come on, tell me, what trick did you use? Senior sister, Huan called out helplessly. All right, I won't bring it up. But this kid truly has some skills. In just a few short years, he even managed to cultivate the divine palace. Not much weaker than our little junior sister back in the day, the Lord of Life and Death said with a smile. She had clearly noticed Lin Dong's strength. Although his cultivation in the ordinary reincarnation stage of primordial energy wasn't particularly impressive, the aura emanating from his divine palace surprised her. Flame Lord and the others merely shrugged helplessly at Lin Dong, apparently used to such exchanges. You guys keep chatting. I need to speak with our junior sister. The Lord of Life and Death took Huan aside to a cliff, where she stopped and let her smile gradually fade. She spoke, her tone serious. You've been suppressing your inner power, haven't you? Yes, Huan replied softly, her gaze fixed on the distance as she nodded. The Lord of Life and Death sat down at the edge of the cliff, murmuring, in this condition, you can't defeat the Heavenly King, you know? Don't worry, senior sister. I'll handle it, Huan said with a faint smile. The Lord of Life and Death sighed. Reincarnation changes so much. Still, you'll have to judge for yourself. You're the only one here who can defeat the Heavenly King. Huan sat down beside her, wrapping her slender arms around her knees and whispered, if only these alien demons didn't exist. If that were the case, she wouldn't have to awaken her powers, wouldn't have to freeze all her emotions, or endure the endless cold and solitude. The Lord of Life and Death's face revealed a complicated expression. It's unfair for you to bear such a burden, she said softly. Huan shook her head slightly and buried her face in her knees. It's all right. This time, we'll win, she murmured. After summoning the Lord of Life and Death, the following 2 days passed peacefully. Occasionally, their gazes turned northward, where they could sense an overwhelming battle intent gradually sweeping closer from the distance. This aura was earth-shattering. Even with their immense power, they couldn't help but feel a bit solemn. The collective momentum of the world's strongest beings was not something any individual could withstand. When dawn broke on the 3rd day, the calm before the storm shattered. Lin Dong and his companions looked up to see countless figures swarming like locusts from the distant horizon, their sharp movements splitting the air. The noise reached their ears even from 1,000 miles away. Massive armies of powerful individuals swept forward, finally halting at the foot of their mountain. The sheer number of people stretched endlessly across the sky and ground, filling every inch of space. The Alliance's army was so vast that its end could not be seen. Standing atop the mountain peak, Lin Dong and 7 others were quickly noticed by the Allied forces below. Almost immediately, a respectful, synchronized chant echoed through the air. Greetings, elders. From the enormous army, beams of light shot forward, swiftly approaching the mountain peak where Lin Dong and the others stood. Big brother. A booming voice rang out as a towering figure leapt toward Lin Dong, landing heavily atop the mountain, causing the entire peak to tremble. Little Yin? Lin Dong looked at the massive figure with joy in his eyes. Compared to before, little Yin seemed even larger and more imposing. However, his skin appeared unusually coarse, with faint traces of a purple-gold hue emanating from it. This aura. Lin Dong's eyes narrowed slightly. He detected a familiar energy within little Yin, one that belonged to the Ancestral Talisman. It's the primordial Ancestral Talisman, the Lord of the Primordial Wilderness said with a faint smile, examining little Yin closely before nodding approvingly. It seemed she was satisfied with the Ancestral Talisman's choice of a new master. Little Yin scratched his head and grinned. I discovered it a year ago and gave it a try. Lin Dong smiled and nodded, feeling delighted for little Yin's fortunate encounter. He could sense that little Yin had now stepped into the reincarnation stage. With the primordial Ancestral Talisman in hand, even a true king-level alien demon would pose no threat to him. Lin Dong's gaze then shifted to the figure standing beside little Yin. A tall, black-clad youth with striking features stood there. Who else could it be but little Mink? However, perhaps due to his role as the leader of the Demon Realm Alliance, there was now a sharp and cold edge to his handsome face. At this moment, little Mink also looked at Lin Dong, a faint warmth flashing across his refined features. As their eyes met, they exchanged a smile, a testament to their unspoken bond as brothers. By the way, there's someone eager to meet you, little Mink remarked as if suddenly recalling something. He gestured toward the Demon Realm Alliance's ranks, and a streak of light shot forward. When the glow subsided, a graceful young woman appeared before Lin Dong. She had a supple, slender figure, clothed in elegant robes. Her silky black hair was loosely tied, her skin as fair as snow. Her willow-like waist, delicate eyebrows, and high, jade-like nose formed a strikingly attractive visage. Her luscious red lips curved into a faint, mesmerizing smile that exuded an innate charm. Even just a glance at her left one slightly dazed. Are you Xun'er? Lin Dong, unfazed by her captivating allure, looked at her in surprise and delight. Xun'er greets Lord Lin Dong, the young woman said with a graceful bow. Her smile carried a natural enchantment, and her lively, sparkling eyes brimmed with joy as they boldly yet warmly locked onto Lin Dong. This young woman was none other than the girl who had accompanied Lin Dong to the Demon Realm years ago. Back then, she had accepted the nine-tailed spirit fox's inheritance, resulting in her isolation along with her entire tribe. In just a few short years, the timid girl from the past had undergone a striking transformation. Her bright eyes fixed on Lin Dong, and even his steadfast demeanor couldn't help but waver under the overwhelming charm she now possessed. He felt a twinge in his waist, a testament to the nine-tailed spirit fox's legendary allure. No wonder even the Devouring Lord, despite being married, had once been entangled with the nine-tailed spirit fox. How is your tribe doing? Lin Dong asked with a smile. Xun'er bit her lip gently and nodded. Our nine-tail clan has once again risen as a dominant force in the demon realm, thanks to Lord Lin Dong's aid back then. Your kindness and generosity are something Xun'er will never forget. Lin Dong returned her smile, feeling genuinely pleased at the nine-tail clan's resurgence. In the distance, more figures approached: Qing Tan, Ling Qingzhu, Tang Xinlian, Qing Ji, and other high-ranking members of the allied forces. Huan surveyed the gathered coalition and took a deep breath. Now that everyone is here, the command of the three allied armies will be entrusted to Miss Tang Xinlian. The rest of us must do our utmost to support her. This battle must not be lost, or the living beings of this world may all fall into the hands of the demon prison. Understood. Everyone present saluted solemnly, fully aware of the stakes in this final confrontation. Since that's the case, Huan exchanged a glance with the Lord of Life and Death. A steely determination flashed in their eyes. Let the armies march. We attack the Western Mystery Region. The Western Mystery Region, once one of the four mystery regions, had undergone a drastic transformation. The vast land and sky were now shrouded in darkness, thick with oppressive demonic aura. As the aura accumulated, it formed dense demon clouds in the skies, from which torrents of demonic rain poured down, blanketing everything below. Deep within the demonic haze, ferocious roars echoed endlessly, brimming with savage and violent intent. In one mountain range of the Western Mystery region, the once serene atmosphere was long gone. Countless beasts fled in terror, intermingled with human figures who had sought refuge in the mountains. Their gazes, turned toward the source of the chaos, were filled with dread. Hiss, hiss. From the distance, rolling waves of demonic aura surged forth. Within the black tide, countless crimson eyes glimmered maliciously. They moved with ghostly speed, emitting shrill, maniacal laughter. As the demonic aura swept forward, it pierced through countless beasts and humans, leaving a trail of blood and anguished screams in its wake. It was a hunt, and in this hunt, the living beings were the prey, while the alien demons were the relentless hunters. Though the Western Mystery region had been under the demon prison's control for years, its vastness made complete domination impossible. Many humans and other creatures still lingered, unable to escape before the region was sealed. Now, faced with the alien demons' overwhelming might, they could only hide like mice. Here, they were already nearing the edge of the Western Mystery region. Once they managed to escape, they would be entering a safe zone, a place that felt like heaven compared to the hellish nightmare they were in. Everyone held onto this hope, desperately suppressing the fear in their hearts. But as they saw the countless alien demons drawing ever closer, a wave of helplessness surged within them. Could they truly escape? Blood mist billowed from behind, staining many faces. They wiped the blood from their cheeks, but as despair gripped their hearts, a sudden pause in their steps caught them by surprise. Someone ahead stopped, gazing blankly at the distant sky. In the far distance, a sharp whistling wind cut through the air, followed by dark clouds rushing swiftly toward them. As the clouds neared, they realized it was not just any storm, but an army of powerful human warriors gathered together in a massive force. Countless figures filled the sky, descending like locusts, blotting out the sun. The terrifying battle intent radiating from them seemed to force the terrifying demonic aura that permeated the Western Mystery region to retreat. That's all the refugees fleeing through the mountains halted in their tracks. Looking at the overwhelming army approaching, joy suddenly surged in their desperate eyes. Ah! They waved their arms madly, some of them letting out shrill cries. The glimmer of hope that emerged in their hopelessness almost brought them to tears. The alien demon forces that had been chasing them also stopped at this moment, their crimson eyes staring at the approaching Alliance army. Surprise flashed across their faces, and then a sharp command rang out. Instantly, the demonic aura began to rapidly retreat. Kill! But just as the alien demons began to fall back, a thunderous, unified roar resounded, shaking the heavens and earth. The primordial energy surged violently, and countless energy threads screamed across the sky, crashing into the alien demon forces. Boom! 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 The earth trembled violently, and the once ferocious alien demon army was obliterated by this overwhelming assault, their demonic aura entirely eradicated. 3 allied armies, listen up, form the battle formation, advance, and strike down any alien demons encountered along the way. Kill without mercy. A clear, commanding voice filled with dignity echoed through the sky, reverberating across the land. Yes. The response came in unison, and the sound of thousands upon thousands of voices seemed to vibrate the very air around them. Endless armies surged forward, clearly arranged into battle formations, ready to respond to any attack with precision. The refugees who had been saved from the mountains watched, stunned, as wave after wave of this locust-like army swept across the sky. The battle intent, so powerfully unified, made their bodies heat up in excitement. Quickly retreat from the Western Mystery region. A senior officer from the 3 allied armies soared down from the sky. He waved his hand at the refugees and barked an order, then immediately returned to his unit. That's the army of the 3 allied forces. They're going to retake the Western Mystery region and battle the demon prison. Some among the refugees, clearly knowledgeable about the situation, gasped in astonishment. Shall we leave as well? Hatred suddenly surged in the eyes of some. They gritted their teeth and turned their gaze toward the demon-infested Western Mystery region, then abruptly turned and roared, charging after the Allied forces. My brothers, all killed by the alien demons. Where else can we go? The Western Mystery region is our home, and if we die, we'll die here. A sharp, grief-stricken cry rang out from somewhere. In the next moment, many eyes reddened. Those who had been fleeing in fear earlier now seemed to regain their courage, and without hesitation, they turned and followed the army, though their occasional angry roars revealed their deep pain. Captain, a small squad of the Allied forces looked down at the refugees, then turned to their captain. Let them follow. They need revenge too. With the leaders commanding the battle and the elders overseeing, they'll be safe. We just focus on exterminating the alien demons. The captain shook his head. He could feel their hatred. His own family had been wiped out, and he was the only one left.
Yes.
The Allied army, like a tide sweeping through the world, entered the Western Mystery region from its borders. With an ironclad resolve, they pressed forward, leaving a trail of destruction in their wake. Wherever they passed, countless alien demons were obliterated, and the ground was littered with the debris of war. However, despite the overwhelming pressure from the Alliance army, the demon prison remained silent. Based on the intelligence we've gathered, the true forces of the demon prison are now concentrated in Western Mystery City, which was once the headquarters of the Western Mystery sect. However, the sect has since been annihilated by the demon prison. Amid the advancing army, Tang Xun'er gazed into the distance, her delicate face exuding a solemn and icy resolve. During this period, the demon prison has remained eerily quiet. They must be plotting something. I urge everyone to stay vigilant. Both Ing Huanhuan and Lin Dong nodded slightly. Knowing the demon prison's nature, they would never sit idly by. In the ancient war, the two sides clashed for countless years without either showing such restraint. They likely hesitate to make the first move because they fear the consequences. After all, things are not the same as they were back then, the Flame Lord said slowly. The dimensional rift has been sealed. They've lost their steady stream of reinforcements, and the alien demon emperor is no longer with them. Compared to us, they are at a disadvantage. Regardless, we must remain cautious, said the Lord of Life and Death, her youthful face now carrying a rare depth of gravity. Gazing into the distance, she murmured, Our master burned through his reincarnation to give us this advantage. So, no matter what, we cannot lose this battle. Everyone nodded emphatically. Here, the forces of this world had gathered to make their stand. If even they were to fail, there would be no one left to stop the advance of the demon prison. When that time comes, this land would fall into ruin, much like the Western Mystery region, and all living beings would become prey to the demon prison. At our current pace, we should reach the Western Mystery Desert in 2 days, Tang Xun'er said, taking a deep breath as her chest gently rose and fell. We have no retreat. For the sake of all life in this world, and for those we hold dear, let us fight with all we have. Western Mystery Desert. This was the most expansive region within the Western Mystery region. In the past, its golden sands stretched endlessly. But now, those deserts had turned pitch black. Malignant demonic aura rose from the sands, polluting what was once a grand and awe-inspiring desert. At its center stood a towering city, solemn and lonely. It had been the most prosperous place in the Western Mystery region, but now, not a trace of life remained. The viscous demonic aura enveloped the city, and in its depths, faint crimson and ferocious gazes flickered within the sinister mist. At the city's core loomed a colossal dark tower, thousands of feet high, dominating the skyline. At its pinnacle, several shadowy figures stood, their eyes fixed on the north. There, they sensed an overwhelming force steadily approaching. So, they're finally coming? The leading figure, clad in a black robe, let out a soft chuckle. His complexion was unnaturally pale, his lips curved in what appeared to be a gentle smile. Yet his black eyes were devoid of any emotion. After so many years, there's no need to stay in hiding anymore. I can't wait to kill them all, said a frail-looking youth beside him, extending a crimson tongue to lick his lips as he grinned slyly. "Is everything ready?" the black-robed heavenly king asked with a smile. "Yes." The others behind him all grinned and nodded, their laughter brimming with unrestrained savagery. "Good." The heavenly king stretched lazily, his smile growing gentler as he looked northward. Within the depths of his eyes, a frenzied sharpness began to surface.